Catus, Maximus here. Just thought I'd do a video about the new Williams new generation SuperRench with their traditional misspelling. This happens to be a 1 and 13/16. I bought this for a great deal. It happened to be just a one-off wrench, so it wasn't part of a set or anything, but that's how I've managed to build up such a big set of large wrenches for not very much money. Maybe, I mean, it's just taken years and years to put it together that way. Obviously, big sets of big wrenches, especially American made, are going to be expensive. Surprisingly enough, these Williams super wrenches, I would recommend them easily for the price. This is a 1 and 13/16 wrench. It weighs 6 1/4 pounds. They've thrown a ton of steel in it. This beam is a square, on this size wrench, this beam is the equivalent of a square inch of steel. It's just crazy how much steel they've thrown into it. Much better than the older super wrenches. And this Tecton, for the same size wrench, is around 60. You can find this American made Williams for around 100. So they're around 70% more expensive for the same size wrench versus Tecton's new ones. This is one of the old generation, really crummy Tectons. Tecton's new wrenches are pretty nice. But, and if you're really budget constrained, I'd still recommend them for just being the cheapest of the big wrenches that you want to buy, unless you're just going to get the no-name Chinese set. But Williams, and Snap-on owns Williams, is selling these for a very good price. Really surprised that you can find a wrench like this big, this particular size, 1 and 13/16 for around $100. Super awesome. Real quick, don't like the basic Williams logo. Really like the old Williams logo. We can see, proportionally speaking, this is a what is this? This is a 1 and 7/16, so not much smaller, but we can see proportionally Williams have really thrown a lot more steel at the beam, truly making it a super wrench. We can see versus the old one. Hard to manipulate this. Old Williams, not fluted. The new ones are fluted. And pretty much all open-end wrenches, they use a broach. It kind of looks like an alligator tail. It just has a series of cutters stacked on top of each other, so it looks like maybe a rattlesnake tail, but really huge, and each one's slightly bigger, and they run it through to size these, and it's always evidenced by little linear marks that are on it. Maybe a little hard to see on this wrench. What I thought was interesting, at least on this bigger, newer Williams wrenches, is you don't see that. You see these chowder marks that go this way. This is actually a milled opening. And you can see where the mill cutter actually got pushed over just a little bit, just because of the flashing that from when they forged the wrench. Just the metal's a little bit harder right on that edge. And I thought that was pretty surprising, the fact that they have a milled opening. That's pretty cool, and it is very well sized. Anyway, so that's the comparison of the previous Super Wrench series. But even though this is a bigger wrench, once again, proportionally speaking, they've thrown more steel at it. Really pretty surprised. Anyway, continuing on, we do have like the older style Tecton Chinese ones. This is what those traditional Chinese raised panel ones are. This wrench happens to be larger than this Williams and probably weighs a couple pounds less, but Tecton does have their new generation wrenches. What's nice is I still have a lifetime warranty, even though these are just the basic laser etched Tectons. That's kind of the nice thing, is if this ever breaks on me, I will get one of the new ones as a replacement. Lifetime warranties are a big deal. As far as fit and finish, besides having a milled opening, the chamfers are really pretty nice and consistent. The beam is actually surprisingly straight. A lot of times the wrench beams will be bent, long pieces of forged steel. Take a lot of effort to really straighten out after manufacturing, and a lot of times they just don't do that. This is the satin finish one. It's a little bit cheaper than the chrome finish one. Just a nice heavy buckle. You can just see how thick this neck is. It almost consumes the whole buckle. Nice and thick. Really even, consistently centered chamfer. Well-rounded and pretty symmetrical buckle. Really surprised. Really good job for the price that they're charging. And that's the rest of the point of this video. Part of what I do on my channel is, since I collect various tools, I can do comparisons. It's difficult for other people. This is an OTC interchangeable handle wrench, an old OTC, but nonetheless, we can still see that the Williams, the beam on this Williams is maybe even thicker than an OTC that's designed to actually have a very long extension handle put on it. Certainly think these Williams Super Wrenches, and for the price, it's a no-brainer. I would buy these over the Protos. I think the Protos are more expensive than the Williams, and the Williams are going to be a lot stronger. This is a newer style Proto where they've kind of rounded the beam, but you can see proportionally it's still pretty thin, and I have seen some Proto wrenches with bent beams before. Here's a Proto, a big old Proto. This is a 2-inch one. It's an older one, but not a LA version. And this is really obvious. You can see this beam is surprisingly narrow for how large of a buckle, and the fact that this really is a 2-inch wrench. And these are the style that I have seen bent. Not just Proto wrenches, but these particular older ones just weren't as strong as they should have been. But they did have this nice design where the buckle kind of sticks out, gives you a little bit better access. Toss those down. Maybe another good brand, I don't know which is owned by Stanley Black & Decker. Owns Mac Tools, Proto, some of those brands, and Blackhawk. So this is a Blackhawk 1 5/8. This is another good option because they have a really thick square beam on them. Nice flare, nicely made, pretty thick box end, and really pretty well manufactured and good tolerances on the open end. But even on this Blackhawk, proportionately speaking, this section of the beam versus the size of the opening is still much less than on this Williams. I mean, Snap-on really went all out on this wrench. Which is what I'm going to compare it to, is this old Snap-on 1 9/16. So, both of these are made by the same company, but surprisingly enough, they are indeed different forgings. I don't know if the newest modern Snap-on wrenches are still like this, but there's one thing that sets it apart is you can still see the Williams where it's like a wrench that was made straight and then they bent it a little bit. But you can see the distinctiveness on that genuine Snap-on where it's a completely straight beam. And then the forging is just really precise, tight tolerances. Where the effect is you actually get the ring just looks like it's been tilted up and kind of sinks down. We can also see what the genuine Snap-on does. It has a really thick beam too. And then it flares out to just be extra thick. So I would assume that the Snap-on would just be made slightly heavier duty than their own Williams counterpart. And indeed it is. But wow. The Williams, the new Super Wrenches, are pretty serious. And you really are going to have to spend a whole bunch more money to get a, genuine Snap-on to really be able to improve on it, to tell you the truth. And sure, there's a lot of manufacturers that don't have large wrenches. I mean, it's as far as just professional brands, there would be dozens of them. But this is going to be a hard wrench to beat. Williams, and for the prices that they're selling, for this, given the size of their wrench, the fact that, this thing is super duper. If we measure the width on this beam here, on this 1 13/16, this beam is over 1.5 inches wide and over 5/8 of an inch thick. Even though it's curved off, it's about a square inch of steel all the way through here. And that's, for the size, it's just overkill. This is a wrench that I am pretty confident that the box end will split or the open end will actually spread open before this darn beam does. The biggest downside, 6¼ pounds just for a wrench like this. These you're going to get a workout using, but man, I'm actually surprised. Good job, Williams. That was just a nice upgrade. And I guess on the last note, I do like the old logo. No reason for them to have used such a plain logo. And yes, there is some inconsistency because I did just buy this Williams spinner handle and it has yet a different logo design. So they probably should get that figured out. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.